The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and Lihanna stepped onto the polished metal floor of Zarian Station. Around her, towering alien figures moved through the corridors like giants from another world. She had to crane her neck to look. Up at most of them, a group of Vorthic cadets walked past her, their scaly green skin gleaming under the bright lights. Each one stood at least 8 feet tall, with muscles that could crush steel. Their yellow eyes glanced down at her with something that looked like pity mixed with disgust. "Another human," one of them said in their deep, rumbling voice. "How many charity cases are they letting in this year?" Hannah kept walking, her small bag slung over her shoulder. She had heard worse things said about her kind, much worse. But she could not let it show on her face. Not here, not when everything depended on her staying invisible. The Zarian Galactic Naval Academy stretched out before her like a small city, floating in space. Through the massive windows, she could see stars scattered across the darkness like tiny diamonds. Ships of every size and shape docked at the station's many ports. This was the most important military school in the galaxy, where future officers learned to command fleets that could destroy entire planets, and she was just another nobody human trying to fit in. "Attention all new cadets," a voice announced over the speakers. "Report to Assembly Hall 7 for orientation. Do not be late." Hannah followed the crowd of alien cadets through the winding corridors. The academy was built for beings much larger than humans, so everything felt too big. The doorways towered above her head. The stairs were built for longer legs. Even the water fountains were too high for her to reach without standing on her toes. A female human cadet fell into step beside her. She had short black hair and looked to be about 20 years old, the same age Hannah appeared to be. "I'm Park Mina," the girl said with a nervous smile. "I'm guessing you're human too, unless you're some kind of really short alien I've never seen before." "Lihanna," she replied simply. She had practiced saying that name so many times it almost felt real now. "Where are you from?" Mina asked as they walked. "I'm from the Sol Colony on Kepler 442b. My parents nearly had heart attacks when I got accepted here." They kept saying things like, "Are you sure they didn't make a mistake?" And "Maybe you should just stay home and become a teacher." Hannah nodded but did not answer the question about where she was from. She could not tell Mina that her official records were all lies, carefully crafted by the best forgers in human intelligence. The real Lihanna had died in a transport accident 3 years ago. Her identity had been borrowed, cleaned up, and given to someone who needed to disappear. Assembly Hall 7 was enormous, with seats that could hold thousands of cadets. Most of the chairs were sized for the larger alien species, leaving the few dozen human cadets looking like children sitting at the adults' table. Hannah found a seat near the back and tried to make herself invisible. The hall filled up quickly. She saw Vorthex with their reptilian features and massive frames. There were Celestians, tall and thin with pale blue skin that seemed to glow softly in the light. A group of Krillian cadets sat together, their forearms moving in complex gestures as they spoke in their musical language. Then there were the humans. Maybe 40 of them in total, scattered throughout the huge hall like tiny islands in an ocean of aliens. Most looked nervous. Some looked angry. A few looked ready to run back to the shuttle. The lights dimmed, and a figure walked onto the stage. Commandant Veltar was a Vorthic who stood nearly 9 feet tall. His dark green scales were marked with the scars of old battles, and his yellow eyes seemed to look right through everyone in the room. When he spoke, his voice was deep enough to make the floor vibrate. "Welcome to the Zarian Galactic Naval Academy," he began. "You are here because your governments believe you have what it takes to become officers in the Galactic Defense Force. Most of you are wrong." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "Each year we accept cadets from across the galaxy. The best and brightest from every world and every species. The strong, the smart, the brave." His eyes seemed to find the human section of the hall. "And yes, we also accept a certain number of cadets from developing worlds as part of our outreach program." Hannah felt Maida tense up beside her. Several other human cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "Make no mistake," Veltar continued. This is not a charity. We do not lower our standards for anyone. If you cannot keep up, you will be sent home. If you cannot learn, you will be dismissed. If you cannot prove that you belong here, you will find yourself back on whatever backwater planet you came from. One of the human cadets, a young man with broad shoulders and defiant eyes, stood up. With respect, sir, humans have been fighting wars since before most of these species learned to make fire. We earned our place here. The hall went dead quiet. Hannah recognized the type immediately. Young, proud, angry at the unfair treatment. His name tag read Kim Tae-ho, and she could tell he was about to make things much worse for all of them. Commandant. Veltara's eyes fixed on Tae-ho like targeting. Lasers. Cadet Kim, is it? Tell me, how many interstellar conflicts has your species participated in? Well, we haven't had the chance yet, but how many fleet engagements, how many planetary sieges, how many deep space operations? Tae-ho's face turned red. None, sir, but that doesn't mean— Sit down, cadet. The commandant's voice cut through the air like a blade. Your passion is noted. Your ignorance is showing? Tae-ho sat down hard, his hands clenched into fists. The fact remains, Valtar said, turning back to address the whole room, that some species have been fighting wars among the stars for thousands of years. Others have barely left their home systems. Some have reflexes that can track objects, moving at light speed. Others struggle to see in the dark. Some can survive in the vacuum of space for hours. Others need machines just to breathe. His meaning was clear, even if he did not say it directly. Humans were weak. Humans were slow. Humans were the bottom of the food chain in a galaxy full of predators. Your instructors will evaluate your abilities fairly, the commandant continued. But they will not pretend you are something you are not. Excellence is earned, not given. Respect is earned, not demanded. Your place here is earned, not guaranteed. The orientation continued for another hour, covering rules and regulations, class schedules, and dormitory assignments. Hannah listened, with half her attention while the other half cataloged potential threats, escape routes, and surveillance systems. Old habits were hard to break. When it was over, the cadets filed out in groups. The aliens walked together, talking and laughing in their various languages. The humans clustered together like refugees, whispering angrily about the unfair treatment they had just received. Can you believe that? Maina said as they walked toward the dormitory levels. Charity cases, outreach program? We scored just as high on the entrance exams as anyone else here. Higher, in some cases, Tae-ho added, having caught up to them. I had perfect scores in tactical analysis and strategic planning, but apparently that doesn't matter because I can't breathe poison gas or see through walls. Hannah said nothing. She had taken the entrance exams too, though her scores had been carefully adjusted to appear merely average. Too high and people would ask questions, too low and she would not get in. The balance had to be perfect. They reached the human dormitory section, which was smaller and more cramped than the areas designed for other species. The rooms were built for human proportions, which was a relief after spending hours feeling like a child in a world made for giants. Well, Mina said as they stopped outside their assigned room, I guess we'll have to prove them wrong the hard way. Hannah nodded and smiled, playing the part of a hopeful young cadet ready to take on the galaxy. Inside, she was already planning. She would need to be careful about how well she performed in training exercises. Too good and her cover would be blown? Too bad and she might get kicked out before she could complete her real mission. As she unpacked her few belongings in the small room she would share with Maina, Hannah thought about the files locked away in the deepest vaults of human intelligence. Files that told a very different story about human capabilities. Files that described operations where a single human operative had done things that entire alien fleets could not accomplish, but those files were classified beyond top secret. The aliens in this academy would never see them. To them, she was just another nobody from a backwater species, barely worth their time or attention. That was exactly how she needed it to stay. 3 weeks into academy life, Hannah sat in the back row of tactical warfare class, watching instructor Crystal pace in front of a holographic star map. The Celestial instructor's pale blue skin glowed softly as he pointed at different star systems. With one of his 4 long arms, "Today we will study the Battle of Proxima Station," Crystal announced in his high musical voice. 5 years ago, the Zephyrian Death Fleet attacked this colony with 300 warships. The colonists had no military forces and no way to escape. The hologram showed a massive fleet of dark ships surrounding a small space station. Red dots marked the attacking vessels, while a single green dot represented the doomed colony. "The attack should have succeeded," the instructor continued. "The Zephyrians had overwhelming force. Their plan was perfect. Their execution was flawless, but something impossible happened." Hannah's hands tightened slightly in her lap. She remembered that day better than she wanted to. "An unknown operative infiltrated the command ship," Crystal said. "Using methods we still do not understand, this person disabled the entire fleet from the inside. 300 ships rendered helpless in less than 2 hours. The colonists were saved, but we never learned who was responsible." A Vorthek cadet raised his massive hand. "Instructor, how could one person defeat an entire fleet? It makes no sense." "That is the mystery, Cadet Gorthek. Military analysts have studied this event for years. Some believe it was a group of highly trained commandos. Others think the Zephyrians suffered a computer virus that caused system failures." Hannah stared at the hologram, remembering the cold metal corridors of the Zephyrian flagship. She could still feel the weight of the stolen uniform she had worn, still smell the alien air that had burned her lungs. Getting onto that ship had taken 3 days of floating in space, pretending to be debris from a destroyed transport. "The operation was given the code name Ghost Protocol," Crystal continued, "because whoever did it vanished like a ghost, leaving no trace behind. Ghost Protocol. That was not what they had called it in the classified files. Her handler, Admiral Chun Junho, had simply marked it as Operation Cleansing Light, just another job in a long list of jobs that officially never happened." "Can anyone tell me what made this operation so significant?" the instructor asked. Kim. Taiho raised his hand. "It proved that even large fleets can be vulnerable to unconventional attacks." "Correct. But there is more. This operation marked the first time someone had successfully hacked Zephyrian military systems. Their technology was considered impossible to breach." Hannah remembered the weeks of preparation it had taken. Learning the Zephyrian language, studying their computer systems, memorizing the layout of their ships. The hardest part had been the neural interface surgery that let her connect directly to their networks. She still had a small scar behind her left ear where the doctors had implanted the connection port. After class, she walked back to her dormitory with Mina and Taiho. They were talking excitedly about the lecture, but Hannah only half listened. Her mind was back on that Zephyrian command ship, remembering the moment when she had finally broken through their security systems. "Hey, Hannah," Mina said, breaking into her thoughts. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" "Just tired," Hannah replied. "The classes here are harder than I expected." That was not entirely a lie. Pretending to be bad at things she was actually good at required constant effort. In yesterday's combat simulation, she had to force herself to miss shots that should have been easy. During the zero-gravity exercise, she had stumbled and floated awkwardly even though she had spent years training in space. "Tell me about it," Taiho said. "Instructor Tishka made us run tactical scenarios for 4 hours today. I swear that Vorthek enjoys watching us fail." They reached their dormitory and went their separate ways. Hannah's room was small but private, one of the few advantages of being in the human section. She sat on her narrow bed and activated her personal communicator. Entering a complex encryption code, a few seconds later, Admiral Chun's face appeared on the small screen. He looked older than she remembered, with new lines around his eyes and gray in his black hair. "Report," he said simply. "Cover is holding," Hannah replied in a low voice. "No signs that anyone suspects my identity. The Academy's security focuses on preventing outside attacks, not investigating student backgrounds." "Good. Any progress on the main objective?" Hannah shook her head. Still gathering information. There are definitely Dominion agents here, but I haven't identified them yet. They're being careful. The Dominion was a radical group that believed aliens were superior to humans in every way. They wanted to prove that humanity had no place in the galactic community. According to intelligence reports, they had infiltrated the academy and were planning something that would embarrass or endanger human cadets. Be patient, Chun said. These operations take time. But remember, if your cover is blown, we cannot help you. You're completely on your own out there. Understood, sir. The transmission ended, leaving Hannah alone with her thoughts. She lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, thinking about how she had ended up here. 2 years after the Proxima Station operation, she had been called to stop an even greater threat. Ancient machines called Precursor weapons had been discovered on a dead planet in the Outer Rim. These devices could destroy entire star systems with a single activation. Several alien governments wanted to claim them for their own use. Hannah had infiltrated the research facility and spent 3 weeks learning how the machines worked. The technology was so advanced that it seemed like magic. Weapons that could reach across space and time, turning stars into bombs or planets into dust. The worst part was that the machines were still active. Someone just needed to figure out how to control them. She had solved that puzzle in the nick of time. As teams of alien scientists worked to unlock the weapons, she had quietly reprogrammed the control systems. Instead of activating, the machines had destroyed themselves in a chain reaction that left nothing but empty space where the research facility had been. Officially, the facility had suffered an accident, equipment failure, they said. Poor safety procedures. The alien governments had been disappointed but not suspicious. None of them imagined that a human could have understood technology at their best. Scientists could not figure out that operation had earned her the code name Ghost 7. She was the 7th operative in the Ghost program and by far the most successful. The other 6 had all died on various missions, their names carved on a memorial wall in a room deep beneath Human Defense Headquarters. Admiral Chun had offered her retirement after the Precursor incident. Full pension, new identity, a quiet life on any colony world she chose. She had seriously considered it. The constant stress of living a lie was wearing her down. Every mission carried the risk of discovery, capture, or death, but then the intelligence reports about the Academy had come in. Dominion agents were planning something big, something that could set back human integration into galactic society by decades. The operation required someone who could blend in as a student while investigating from the inside, someone who was young enough to pass as a cadet, someone skilled enough to operate without backup, someone expendable enough that their loss would not compromise other operations, someone like Ghost 7. Hannah rolled over and closed her eyes, trying to push away the memories of blood and smoke, and the screams of dying enemies. Tomorrow there would be more classes to attend, more tests to barely pass, more chances to slip up and reveal who she really was. The next morning brought advanced tactics with Instructor Crystal. He had prepared a special simulation for the class, something he called the Proxima Gambit. This scenario is based on the Ghost Protocol operation, he explained as cadets filed into the simulation chamber. You will attempt to recreate the unknown operative's success. Your goal is to disable an enemy fleet using only stealth and electronic warfare. One by one, the cadets entered the simulation pods. Hannah watched as Vorthic, Celestian, and Krillian students attempted the scenario. All of them failed within minutes. Their approaches were too direct, too conventional. They tried to fight the fleet instead of understanding it. Disappointing, Crystal said after the 20th failure. Perhaps this scenario is simply too advanced for first-year cadets. Finally, it was Hannah's turn. She stepped into the simulation pod and felt the neural interface activate. Suddenly, she was floating in space again, looking at the same Zephyrian fleet she had faced 5 years ago. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Muscle memory took over. She began infiltrating the fleet's communications network, using techniques that took her months to develop. Within minutes, she had identified the command ship and plotted an infiltration route. Then she caught herself. This was supposed to be impossible for a first-year cadet. She was supposed to fail like everyone else. Reluctantly, she made a series of obvious mistakes. She chose the wrong target ship. She used outdated hacking methods that the Zephyrians would easily detect. She allowed herself to be discovered and eliminated by fleet security. Another failure, Crystal announced as she exited the pod. Though you lasted longer than most, perhaps humans have some small talent for unconventional thinking. It was meant to be a compliment, but it felt like an insult. Hannah had just pretended to fail at recreating her own greatest success. The irony was almost painful. As she walked back to her dormitory, she noticed Instructor Taika watching her. From across the corridor, the Vorthak's yellow eyes seemed to study her with unusual interest. When their gazes met, he quickly looked away. That night, Hannah lay awake thinking about that look. In her experience, when someone started paying too much attention to her, it usually meant trouble was coming. The alarm screamed through the academy corridors at 3 a.m. Hannah woke instantly, her hand reaching for a weapon that was not there. Beside her, Mina sat up in confusion, rubbing her eyes. "What's happening?" Mina asked. Emergency lights bathed their room in red as announcements echoed from the speakers. "All cadets report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." They dressed quickly and ran into the hallway. Other human cadets were stumbling out of their rooms, looking scared and confused. The alien cadets moved with more confidence, as if they had done this many times before. Instructor Taiska appeared at the end of the corridor, his massive Vorthak frame blocking most of the light. "Human cadets, follow me to emergency station 7, he commanded. As they walked through the twisting corridors, Hannah noticed something wrong. They were being led away from the main academy sections, toward the outer ring where fewer people would see them. Her training kicked in automatically. She began counting turns, memorizing the route, noting possible escape paths. What kind of emergency requires separating humans from other cadets? She whispered to Mina. Maybe it's some kind of atmospheric thing, Mina whispered back. Different species need different air mixtures. Hannah did not think so, but she kept her doubts to herself. They reached Emergency Station 7, which turned out to be a large room filled with monitoring equipment. Instructor Tashika sealed the door behind them and turned to address the group of 30 human cadets. There has been a systems failure in the Academy's main computer core, he said. Until repairs are complete, you will remain here for your own safety. Kim Taiho stepped forward. Why just humans? Why aren't the other cadets being evacuated too? Taiska's yellow eyes fixed on him coldly. Do not question procedures you do not understand, Cadet Kim. Sit down and wait for further instructions. Something about his tone made Hannah's skin crawl. She had heard that exact voice before, but not from Taiska. It reminded her of someone else, someone dangerous. Hours passed. The other cadets gradually fell asleep on the hard floor, but Hannah remained awake. She watched Taiska carefully, noting how he moved, how he spoke, how he held his head. Little details that most people would never notice. Around dawn, another instructor arrived. Commander Vexahol was a Celestian with 4 arms and pale blue skin that glowed softly in the dim light. He spoke quietly with Taishiga near the door. Too far away for the cadets to hear, but Hannah had learned to read lips in 6 different alien languages. She caught fragments of their conversation. ... the target is definitely here, ... double quotes, way to identify which one. ... we'll have to eliminate them all if necessary, ... Her blood went cold. This was not an emergency evacuation. This was a trap. She nudged Mena awake and whispered in her ear. When I give the signal, create a distraction. Start an argument with Taiho about something loud. What? Why? Trust me, something is very wrong here. Before Mena could ask more questions, Hannah stood up and walked toward the back of the room. She pretended to examine the monitoring equipment while actually looking for another way out. The ventilation shaft was too small for most species, but humans might fit. She caught Mina's eye and nodded slightly. Her roommate looked confused but started arguing with Taiho about academy food quality. Their voices grew louder, drawing the attention of both instructors, while they were distracted. Hannah slipped behind a bank of computers and found the access panel for the ventilation system. Her fingers worked quickly, using techniques she had learned during her infiltration training. The panel opened silently. She crawled into the shaft and began moving through the Academy's ventilation system. The metal tubes were cramped and uncomfortable, but they led everywhere in the station. After 20 minutes of crawling, she found a shaft that opened into Instructor Taishka's private office. The room was empty, but his computer terminal was still active. Hannah dropped down from the ceiling and quickly accessed his files. What she found made her hands shake with anger. Taishka was not really an academy instructor. His real name was Korvac, and he was a high-ranking agent of the Dominion. The radical group had placed several operatives throughout the academy, all working toward the same goal. They wanted to eliminate Ghost 7. The files contained detailed intelligence reports about human operations over the past 5 years. Someone had connected the dots between various missions and realized that a single operative was responsible. They knew Ghost 7 was somewhere in the academy, hidden among the human cadets. Their plan was simple and brutal. If they could not identify the specific target, they would eliminate all the human cadets and claim it was an accident. A systems failure, they would say. Tragic but unavoidable. Hannah copied the files onto a portable drive and climbed back into the ventilation shaft. She had to warn the others, but she also had to be careful. If she revealed too much knowledge about Dominion operations, it would blow her cover. She made her way back to Emergency Station 7 and slipped out of the ventilation shaft while the instructors were still dealing with Mina and Taiho's fake argument. "The argument needs to stop now," she whispered to Mina. "I found what I was looking for." Over the next hour, she quietly moved among the human cadets, whispering warnings and instructions. She told them that something was wrong with the emergency evacuation, that they needed to be ready to fight or run. Most of them looked at her like she was crazy. A few, including Taiho and Mina, seemed to understand that she knew more than she was saying. "How do you know all this?" Taiho whispered, "You're talking like some kind of military expert." "My family has military background," Hannah lied. "They taught me to recognize dangerous situations." It was a weak excuse, but Taiho seemed to accept it. Around midday, Instructor Taishika announced that the emergency was over and they could return to their dormitories. But as the cadets filed toward the door, Hannah noticed something that made her stomach clench with fear. Commander Vexahul was holding a small device that looked like a remote control. And there were new panels on the walls that had not been there before. Panels that looked very much like explosive charges. They were not being released. They were being led into a trap where all the evidence would be destroyed along with their bodies. "Wait," Hannah said loudly, stopping the group of cadets. "I think I left something in the monitoring station." She turned and walked back toward the computers, but her real goal was the ventilation shaft. If she could get back into the academy's main systems, she might be able to send a distress signal or disable the explosives. "Cadet Lee," Taishka called after her, "where are you going?" "Just checking on something, sir. I'll be right back." But as she reached for the ventilation panel, she heard the soft beep of weapons being powered up. She turned to see both instructors pointing energy rifles at the group of human cadets. "Nobody moves," Vexahul said in his musical Celestian voice. "This will all be over soon." The other cadets finally understood that they were in real danger. Some screamed. Others tried to run. Taiho grabbed a chair and threw it at Taishika, but the Vorthak knocked it aside easily with one massive arm. "You cannot do this," Mina shouted. "We're Academy cadets. We have rights." "You have no rights," Taishka growled. "Your species is a disease that needs to be cured, starting with whoever Ghost 7 really is." At the mention of that code name, several cadets looked confused, but Hannah felt her heart stop. They knew, somehow they knew she was here. "That's right," Vexahul said, noticing her reaction. "We know the famous Ghost 7 is hiding among you pathetic humans. We know about Proxima Station, about the precursor weapons, about all the other operations you think are so secret." Hannah's mind raced through her options. She could try to fight, but 2 armed instructors against 30 unarmed cadets was bad odds. She could try to run, but the door was sealed and the ventilation shaft was too far away, or she could do what Ghost 7 did best. She could disappear. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, playing dumb. Ghost 7 sounds like something from a story. Perhaps, Taika said. But we know Ghost 7 is here. So we will eliminate all of you, just to be sure. He raised his weapon toward the group of terrified cadets. Hana saw Mina's face, saw Taiho's desperate attempt to shield the younger cadets with his body, saw 30 innocent people about to die because of her. The choice was simple. Reveal herself and fight, or watch her friends be murdered. For the first time in 5 years, Ghost 7 had to decide what mattered more, her mission or her conscience. Wait, she said, stepping forward. Before you kill us all, don't you want to know which one of us you're really after? Both instructors turned their weapons toward her. What are you saying, human? Hana smiled, and for just a moment let them see the predator that lived behind her innocent cadet disguise. I'm saying you found me. Congratulations. Now let's see if you're good enough to finish the job. The hunt was about to begin, the moment Hana spoke those words, everything changed. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Taishka and Vexahal stared at her with new understanding, their weapons tracking her every movement. So, Taishka said slowly, the famous Ghost 7 has been hiding right under our noses? A pathetic human child. Not so pathetic, Hana replied. Her voice was different now, colder and more confident. You spent months trying to find me, and I've been sitting in your classes the whole time. Behind her, she could hear the other cadets, whispering in confusion and fear. Mina's voice was barely audible. Hana, what are you talking about? What's Ghost 7? Hana did not turn around. She kept her eyes locked on the 2 Dominion agents, watching for the slightest movement that would signal an attack. Your friends don't even know who you really are, Vexahal said with amusement. How does it feel to lie to people who trust you? Better than murdering innocent students, Hana shot back. Taishka laughed, a deep rumbling sound that made the floor vibrate. Innocent? Your species is a plague that spreads across the galaxy, taking what doesn't belong to you. We're doing the universe a favor by stopping you here. And then why don't you try? Hana asked. The Vortex finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. But before he could fire, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red light. In that moment of darkness, Hana moved. She grabbed the nearest computer terminal and threw it at Vexahal, then dove sideways as both aliens opened fire. Energy beams scorched the air where she had been standing. The other cadets screamed and scrambled for cover behind desks and equipment racks. Stay down and stay quiet, Hana shouted to them as she rolled behind a bank of computers. This is not your fight. But even as she said it, she knew that was not entirely true. The Dominion wanted to eliminate all human cadets, not just her. These people were in danger because of what she was, but they would die regardless of what she did now. Taika fired again, his energy beam cutting through the metal desk she was hiding behind like it was made of paper. You cannot hide forever. Ghost 7, this room is sealed. There is nowhere to run. Hana looked around quickly, assessing her options. The ventilation shaft was on the far side of the room, blocked by 2 armed enemies. The door was locked and probably booby-trapped. The walls were solid metal with no other exits, but there was one thing the Dominion agents had not counted on. Hana was not just Ghost 7 the infiltrator. She was also Ghost 7 the inventor of impossible solutions. She pulled out her academy datapad and began typing rapidly. The device was connected to the Academy's network, which meant she could access the station's systems. If she knew the right codes, and she had memorized those codes during her first week here. What are you doing? Over there, Vexahal called out. Sending a message to your human friends? No one is coming to save you. Hana smiled as her fingers flew over the datapad's interface. Who said I was calling for help? The Academy's artificial gravity system responded to her commands. Suddenly, everything in the room became weightless. Taiska and Vexahal floated helplessly in the air, their heavy bodies spinning slowly as they tried to aim their weapons. but Hana had trained extensively in zero-gravity combat. She pushed off from the computer terminal and flew across the room like a missile, slamming into Vexahol feet first. The Celestian's weapon spun away into the air as he crashed into the wall. Taishka fired wildly, his shots going in random directions as he struggled to control his movement. One beam nearly hit Kim Taeho, who was floating near the ceiling with 3 other cadets. "The gravity controls," Hana shouted to Mina, who was gripping a desk leg to keep from floating away. "Red panel by the door. Turn gravity back on when I tell you." She grabbed Vexahol's dropped weapon and spun to face Taishka. The Vorthak was still tumbling through the air, trying to get his massive body oriented properly. In zero gravity, his size was a disadvantage rather than an advantage. "Now," Hana yelled. Mina hit the gravity controls. Everyone crashed to the floor as artificial gravity returned. But Hana had been ready for it. She landed in a crouch and immediately fired at Taisha, who was still trying to get back on his feet. The energy beam struck him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He roared in pain and anger, raising his weapon toward the group of human cadets. "If I cannot have Ghost 7, he snarled, "then none of you will leave this room alive." Hana fired again, but her shot went wide as Vexahol tackled her from behind. The Celestian wrapped all 4 of his arms around her, trying to pin her to the ground. "Kill them all," he shouted to his partner. "We'll sort out which one was Ghost 7 later." Taishka's weapon hummed as it charged for a wide-area blast that would kill everyone in the room. Hana struggled against Vexahol's grip, but the alien was stronger than he looked. Then Kim Taeho did something that surprised everyone, including Hana. He picked up a piece of broken computer equipment and threw it as hard as he could at Taishka's wounded shoulder. The improvised projectile struck the Vorthak just as he was about to fire. His shot went wide, blasting a hole in the ceiling instead of killing the cadets. He spun around in fury, focusing his rage on Taeho. "Brave little human," he growled. "You will die first." But the distraction was exactly what Hana needed. She broke free from Vexahol's grip and rolled across the floor, coming up with her weapon aimed at Taisha's center mass. "Game over," she said, and pulled the trigger. The energy beam caught the Vorthak in the chest, sending him crashing backward into the wall. He slid to the floor and did not get up again. Vexahol made one last desperate attempt to reach his weapon, but Hana was faster. She fired twice, and the Celestian joined his partner in unconsciousness. Silence fell over the room. The human cadets stared at Hana with expressions of shock, fear, and amazement. She had just defeated 2 heavily armed alien instructors in hand-to-hand combat. "Who are you really?" Mina whispered. Before Hana could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the academy. Her unauthorized access to the gravity controls had triggered security protocols. Within minutes, this room would be filled with Academy security forces. "I'm someone who has been lying to you since the day we met," Hana said quietly, "and I'm sorry for that." She walked over to Taishka's unconscious form and began searching through his equipment. She found what she was looking for in his utility belt, a small communication device with Dominion encryption codes. "There are more of them," she said, studying the device's display. "This was just the beginning. The real attack is planned for tomorrow night during the Academy's graduation ceremony." "What attack?" Taeho asked. "What are you talking about?" Hana looked at the group of cadets who had trusted her, who had considered her a friend. She had saved their lives, but she had also shattered their faith in her. "The Dominion wants to prove that humans don't belong in the galactic community," she explained. "They're planning to destroy the entire academy and blame it on human terrorists. Thousands of cadets and instructors will die, and humanity will be banned from all military organizations forever." The weight of that revelation settled over the room like a heavy blanket. These young people had come here to prove themselves, to show that humans could stand alongside the galaxy's greatest species. Now they were learning that some aliens would rather murder them than give them the chance. "What do we do?" Mina asked Hana. "Check the Dominion communication device again." According to the messages, there were at least 6 more agents scattered throughout the academy. They had explosives, weapons, and detailed plans for the attack. "We stopped them," she said simply. "We?" Taiho looked around at the group of first-year cadets. "We're not soldiers. We're just students." "No," Hannah said, meeting his eyes. "You're humans. And that means you're more dangerous than they think." She began moving around the room, gathering weapons and equipment from the fallen Dominion agents. "I can't do this alone. I need help from people I can trust. People who understand what's at stake." "But we don't know how to fight like you do," Mina protested. "You don't need to fight like me," Hannah replied. "You need to fight like yourselves. Humans have been winning impossible battles for thousands of years. Not because we're stronger or faster than our enemies, but because we refuse to give up." She handed out the weapons and communication devices, turning 30 terrified cadets into an improvised strike team. "The graduation ceremony is tomorrow night," she continued. "We have less than 24 hours to find the other Dominion agents and stop their plan. Are you with me?" The cadets looked at each other, fear and determination warring in their faces. They were just kids, really. They had never expected to be thrown into a life-or-death situation like this, but they were also humans. And humans had a long history of doing impossible things when their backs were against the wall. "Kim," Taiho stepped forward first. "I'm in," Park Mina nodded. "Me too." One by one, the others joined them. 30 young humans, armed with stolen weapons. And led by a legend they had never known was among them. The hunt for the remaining Dominion agents was about to begin. The next 18 hours passed like a blur of careful planning and dangerous reconnaissance. Hannah had split the human cadets into small teams, each with a specific mission. Some monitored communications channels for Dominion activity. Others searched for hidden explosives in the Academy's main structures. A few kept watch on suspicious instructors and staff members. Hannah herself moved through the Academy like a ghost, using maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts to avoid detection. The skills that had made her famous in classified files now served to protect her fellow humans. By evening, they had identified 4 more Dominion agents and located several caches of explosives hidden throughout the station. But Hannah knew there were still more enemies out there, and time was running out. The graduation ceremony was set to begin in 2 hours. Thousands of cadets, instructors, and visiting dignitaries would gather in the Academy's Grand Assembly Hall. If the Dominion's plan succeeded, it would be the worst terrorist attack in galactic history. Hannah stood in an empty classroom, studying the intelligence they had gathered. Kim Taiho and Park Mina worked beside her, coordinating with the other teams through stolen Dominion communication devices. Team 3 found another bomb in the power distribution center, Mina reported. "That makes 8 so far." "Any word from Team 5? Hannah asked. Taiho shook his head. "They went to investigate the suspicious activity in the weapons storage area 2 hours ago. We haven't heard from them since." Hannah felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Team 5 consisted of 4 of the younger cadets, barely 18 years old. If they had been captured or killed, it would be her fault for sending them into danger. "I'm going after them," she said, checking her weapon. "That could be a trap," Mina warned. "The Dominion might be using them as bait." "Then it's a trap I have to walk into," Hannah replied. "I won't leave them behind." She made her way through the Academy's lower levels, following the route Team 5 had taken. The weapons storage area was in a restricted section that required special clearance to access. For cadets to get inside, they would have needed help from someone with higher authority. The corridor leading to the storage area was suspiciously quiet. Hannah's training told her to retreat and find another approach, but she could not abandon 4 young people who had trusted her enough to follow her into this mission. She reached the storage area's main entrance and found it standing open. Inside, she could see rows of energy weapons, combat armor, and military equipment. But she could also see something else that made her blood run cold. The 4 cadets from Team 5 were bound and gagged, sitting on the floor in the center of the room. Standing around them were 6 figures in Academy uniforms, but Hannah could tell from their posture and positioning that these were not really instructors. "Come in, Go 7, a familiar voice called out. We've been waiting for you. Hannah stepped into the storage area, her weapon ready but knowing it was useless against so many enemies. The lead figure turned around and she found herself looking at Commander Kethmar, one of the Academy's most respected tactical instructors. Surprised? He asked with a cold smile. You're not the only one who can wear a false identity. Let them go, Hannah said, gesturing toward the captured cadets. They're just kids. They don't know anything important. Oh, but they do, Kethmar replied. They know about you. They've seen the famous Ghost 7 in action. That makes them witnesses who cannot be allowed to live. The other Dominion agents spread out around the room, cutting off any possible escape routes. Hannah recognized the tactical formation immediately. These were not random terrorists. They were trained military operatives who had been planning this operation for months. You cannot win this fight, Kethmar continued. Even you are not good enough to defeat 6 armed opponents in an enclosed space with innocent hostages to protect. He was right, and Hannah knew it. In an open battlefield, she might have had a chance. But here, any stray shot could kill one of the cadets she was trying to save. What do you want? She asked. Simple. You will walk to the Grand Assembly Hall and detonate the explosives yourself. You will die in the blast, along with thousands of others, and humanity will be blamed for the worst terrorist attack in galactic history. And if I refuse? Kethmar gestured toward the captured cadets. Then these 4 die right now, followed by every other human in the Academy. The explosives will still detonate, but it will look like an accident instead of terrorism. Either way, humanity loses. Hannah looked at the frightened faces of the 4 young cadets. They had volunteered for a dangerous mission because they believed in her. Now they were going to die because of that trust, unless she found a way to turn the tables. You've made one mistake, she said quietly. Really? And what's that? You assumed I came here alone? At that moment, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but in that brief moment of darkness, everything changed. The remaining human cadets poured into the storage area from multiple entrances, using the same infiltration techniques Hannah had taught them. Kim Taiho came through the main door, firing his stolen energy weapon at the nearest Dominion agent. Park Mina dropped from a ventilation shaft in the ceiling, landing behind 2 more enemies. The other teams had arrived simultaneously, turning the ambush into a chaotic battle, but the Dominion agents were professional soldiers. They recovered quickly from the surprise and began fighting back with deadly efficiency. Energy beams filled the air as both sides sought cover among the weapons racks. Hannah used the distraction to reach the captured cadets. She cut their bonds quickly and pushed them toward the nearest exit. Get out of here and stay out, she ordered. One of the younger cadets, a girl named Lisuri, grabbed her arm. What about you? This is what I do, Hannah replied. Go. The battle raged around them as the Academy's human cadets fought desperately against trained Dominion operatives. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they fought with the kind of desperate courage that had made humanity famous throughout its history. Taiho managed to disable one enemy by using a combat technique Hannah had shown him. Mina and 2 other cadets cornered another agent behind a rack of armor. But the Dominion forces were slowly gaining the upper hand. Then Academy security forces arrived, alerted by the sound of weapons fire. Suddenly, the storage area was filled with legitimate instructors and guards, all trying to figure out who was shooting at whom. In the confusion, Commander Kethmar made one last desperate play. He grabbed a high-powered explosive device and activated its timer. If I cannot complete the mission, he shouted, then at least I can eliminate Ghost 7. The device in his hands was powerful enough to destroy half the Academy. Hannah saw the countdown timer showing 30 seconds and dropping fast. Without hesitation, she tackled Kethmar and wrestled the device away from him. But the timer was locked and could not be disabled. She had seconds to get the bomb away from the Academy and everyone on it. Emergency evacuation, she shouted to the security forces. Clear the area now. But there was no time for evacuation. The only way to save everyone was to take the bomb somewhere it could not hurt anyone else. Hannah ran through the corridors toward the Academy's shuttle bay. carrying the explosive device as its timer counted down toward zero. Behind her, she could hear the security forces trying to clear the area. But there were thousands of people on the station. She reached the shuttle bay with 15 seconds left on the timer. A small maintenance pod sat in the nearest docking bay, fueled and ready for emergency use. She threw herself into the pilot's seat and launched the pod away from the Academy as fast as its engines could carry her. 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds. Hannah ejected from the pod just as the explosive device detonated. The blast lit up space like a miniature star, destroying the maintenance pod and sending shockwaves through the surrounding area, but the Academy was safe. The graduation ceremony could proceed. Thousands of lives had been saved. Hannah's emergency suit kept her alive in the vacuum of space until Academy rescue ships could reach her. As they pulled her unconscious form from the debris field, automated sensors throughout the station recorded everything that had happened. The truth about Ghost 7 was finally revealed to the galaxy. The legendary operative who had saved countless lives was not some mysterious figure operating from the shadows. She was Lihanna, a 20-year-old human cadet who had sacrificed everything to protect her fellow students. The security footage showed her fighting impossible odds, leading untrained cadets against professional terrorists and ultimately risking her own life to save everyone on the Academy. The galaxy watched in amazement as the species they had dismissed as primitive demonstrated courage that left even the most experienced warriors speechless. When Hannah woke up in the Academy's medical bay 3 days later, she found Admiral Junho sitting beside her bed. Her handler looked older and more tired than she remembered. "The mission is over," he said quietly. "Your cover is blown, your identity is known throughout the galaxy, and your career as a covert operative is finished." Hannah nodded weakly. "Did we stop them all?" "Every last Dominion agent has been captured or eliminated. The terrorist plot has been exposed, and several member governments are reviewing their policies toward humanity." "Good," she said, then closed her eyes. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." But Admiral Chun smiled for the first time in years. "Actually, I think you're going to like what comes next. The Academy wants to offer you a position as an instructor. They figure someone who can turn first-year cadets into an effective strike force might have something valuable to teach." Through the medical bay's window, Hannah could see the Academy's Grand Assembly Hall, where the graduation ceremony had finally taken place. Human cadets stood alongside their alien classmates, no longer segregated or treated as second-class citizens. The legend of Ghost 7 was over. But the story of Lihanna, Academy instructor and bridge between species, was just beginning. 6 months later, Hannah stood at the front of the Academy's largest lecture hall, looking out at an audience that would have been impossible to imagine when she first arrived. The seats were filled with cadets from dozens of different species, all here to attend her class on advanced tactical operations. In the front row sat Park Mina and Kim Tae-ho, now senior cadets, and her official teaching assistants. Behind them were Vorthax, Celestians, Krillians, and many other alien species who had once looked down on humans as inferior. "Today we're going to study something called unconventional warfare," Hannah began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "This is the art of winning battles when you're outnumbered, outgunned, and everyone expects you to lose." A Vorthac cadet raised his massive hand. "Instructor Lee, isn't it better to simply have superior firepower and overwhelming force?" Hannah smiled. "That's certainly easier, Cadet Gorthuk. But what happens when you don't have those advantages? What do you do when your enemy is bigger, stronger, and better equipped than you are? Surrender?" suggested a Celestian in the back row. "That's one option," Hannah agreed. "But let me tell you about a species that chose a different path." She activated the holographic display system, showing images of human history. Ancient battles where small armies defeated much larger forces. Technological innovations born from desperate necessity. Explorers who traveled to impossible places simply because they were told it could not be done. "Humans have been fighting against superior odds for thousands of years," she continued. "Not because we're stronger or smarter than our enemies, but because we approach problems differently." She changed the display to show the recent events at the academy. Security footage of human cadets working together to stop the Dominion terrorist plot. Images of young people who had never been in combat before, learning to fight and think like soldiers in a matter of hours. 6 months ago, these cadets were considered the weakest students in the academy, Hannah said. But when faced with an impossible situation, they didn't give up. They adapted, they improvised, they found a way to win. The alien cadets watched the footage with growing amazement. They saw Kim Tae-ho using makeshift weapons against trained soldiers. They saw Park Mina coordinating teams through stolen communication devices. They saw dozens of inferior humans working together to defeat enemies who should have been able to crush them easily. The key to unconventional warfare, Hannah explained, is not to fight your enemy's fight. Instead, you change the rules of the game. You force them to play by your rules in situations where their advantages become disadvantages. A Krillian cadet spoke up, her musical voice filling the hall. But how do you know what rules to change? How do you recognize these opportunities? Good? Questioned Cadet Thrillia. The answer is that you have to understand both yourself and your enemy better than they understand themselves. You have to find their weaknesses and exploit them while making your own weaknesses irrelevant. Hannah spent the next hour walking through specific examples, showing how smaller forces had defeated larger ones throughout history, she explained. The psychology of underestimated opponents, the value of unpredictability, and the importance of fighting for something worth dying for, but the real lesson was not about tactics or strategy. It was about changing the way these young beings thought about strength and weakness, about what it meant to be superior or inferior. After class, Hannah walked through the academy corridors that had once felt so hostile and unwelcoming. Now alien. Cadets nodded respectfully as she passed. Some even stopped to ask questions about her lectures, or request advice on their tactical studies. The academy itself had changed dramatically since the Dominion incident. The segregated dormitories were gone, replaced by integrated housing where different species lived and learned together. The discriminatory policies that had once limited human participation had been completely abolished. Commandant Veltar had been removed from his position and faced investigation for his role in the systematic discrimination against human cadets. His replacement, Admiral Keishai, was a progressive Celestian who believed strongly in equality among all galactic species. Hannah made her way to the Academy's Memorial Garden, where a new monument had been erected. It bore the names of the 4 Dominion agents who had died during the terrorist plot, as well as the names of every cadet and instructor who had fought to stop them. At the top of the monument, engraved in letters that caught the light from the nearby stars, were the words, "In memory of those who proved that courage knows no species, and that the measure of a being is not in their physical form but in their willingness to stand for what is right." "I thought I might find you here," a familiar voice said behind her. Hannah turned to see Admiral Chun Junho approaching through the garden. Her former handler looked healthier than the last time she had seen him, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "How are you adjusting to life as a public figure?" he asked. "It's strange," Hannah admitted. "For years I was nobody. Then I was Go-7, but nobody knew it. Now everyone knows who I am, but sometimes I'm not sure I know myself anymore." Chun nodded understandingly. "The transition from covert operations to normal life is never easy. Have you thought about my offer?" Several weeks ago, Chun had approached her about returning to human intelligence in an official capacity. Not as a covert operative, but as a trainer and strategist who could help prepare the next generation of human agents. "I'm still thinking about it," Hannah said. "Part of me misses the old work. The missions, the challenges, the feeling that I was making a real difference." "And the other part?" Hannah gestured toward the academy around them. "The other part sees what we're building here. Humans and aliens working together, learning from each other, becoming something better than either could be alone. This feels important, too." They stood in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching cadets from different species study together in the garden. A group of humans and Vorthax were working on a tactical problem, Their different perspectives combining to find solutions that none of them could have reached alone. There's something else, Chun said eventually. Something I think you should know. He handed her a datapad containing an official communication from the Galactic Council. Hannah read it quickly, her eyes widening with surprise. They want to create a new military academy, she said. Based on the integration model we developed here, 3 new academies, actually. 1 in each major galactic sector. They want you to oversee the development of the curriculum and training programs. Hannah stared at the document in amazement. The Galactic Council was offering her the chance to reshape military education throughout known space. To create institutions where species would learn not just to fight together, but to understand and respect each other. It would mean leaving the academy, Chun pointed out. At least temporarily. You'd be traveling constantly, working with governments and military leaders who aren't all as progressive as Admiral Keshai. But it would also mean ensuring that what happened here doesn't stay here, Hannah replied. That the lessons we learned about cooperation and equality spread throughout the galaxy. She looked back at the memorial monument, thinking about the path that had brought her to this moment. From classified operations in the shadows to teaching cadets in the light. From being the most famous person no one knew to being a symbol of human potential that everyone recognized. I'll do it, she said finally. But I have conditions. Name them. Mina and Taiho come with me as assistant instructors. They understand this work better than anyone, and they've earned the right to help shape the future we're building. Chun smiled. I think that can be arranged. Anything else? Hannah thought for a moment. I want regular updates on how the cadets here are doing. This academy was where everything changed, and I don't want to lose touch with that. Done. As they walked back toward the academy's main buildings, Hannah felt a sense of completion that she had never experienced during her years as Ghost 7. The covert missions had been necessary, but they had also been isolating. She had saved countless lives, but always from the shadows, never able to see the full impact of her work. Asterisk. Now she could see it clearly. Human cadets walking confidently through corridors where they had once been unwelcome. Alien instructors teaching classes on human tactical innovations. Species that had never worked together before finding common ground in shared challenges and mutual respect. That evening, Hannah stood once again in front of a packed lecture hall. But this time she was not teaching tactics or strategy. This was a special presentation for the Academy's graduating class, a mix of species preparing to take their place as officers in the Galactic Defense Force. When I first came to this academy, she began, I was told that humans were charity cases from a primitive species. That we lacked the physical and mental capabilities to succeed in advanced military operations. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I was told that some species were naturally superior to others. That strength and intelligence were fixed traits that could not be overcome through effort or determination. She paused, looking out at the diverse group of faces before her. I was told that the natural order of the galaxy had already been established, and that humans should be grateful for whatever small place we were allowed to occupy. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. Everything I was told was wrong. The applause started slowly from the human cadets in the audience, but it quickly spread to the alien students, then to the instructors and visiting dignitaries. Soon the entire hall was on its feet, cheering for a message that transcended species boundaries. The truth, Hannah continued when the applause died down, is that every species has unique strengths and capabilities. Every individual has the potential to achieve greatness, regardless of their physical form or cultural background. The only limits that truly matter are the ones we place on ourselves. She gestured toward the mixed group of graduating cadets. You are the future of galactic civilization. Not because you're the strongest or the smartest, but because you've learned to see past the differences that once divided your species. You've learned to work together, to trust each other, and to build something greater than any of you could achieve alone. The ceremony continued for another hour, with speeches from Academy officials and presentations of awards and commissions. But Hannah's words were the ones that would be remembered, the message that would travel with these graduates as they took their places throughout the galaxy. Later that night, as Hannah packed her belongings for the journey to the first of the new Academy sites, she found a small package on her desk. Inside was a photograph of the original human cadet class, taken on their first day at the Academy 6 months ago. They looked so young and uncertain in the picture, clustered together like refugees in a hostile world. But written on the back of the photograph, in Park Mina's careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for showing us that nobody can make us feel inferior without our consent." Hannah smiled and carefully placed the photograph in her travel bag. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new academies to build, and new bridges to construct between species that had never learned to trust each other. But tonight she allowed herself to feel proud of what they had accomplished. The girl, who had once been nobody at the Academy, had become somebody who could change the galaxy. And the best part was that she had not done it alone. The legend of Go 7 was over. The story of Lihana, teacher and builder of bridges, was just beginning. And throughout the galaxy, young beings of every species were learning that the greatest strength of all was the courage to stand together against those who would divide them. The Academy that had once seen her as a charity case now stood as a symbol of unity and hope. And in lecture halls across known space, her words would continue to echo. The only limits that truly matter are the ones we place on ourselves. The future belonged to those brave enough to remove those limits. And humanity, once dismissed as primitive and weak, would help lead the way.